Is the Fausty Witches show with the Faustiest Witch. How are you this week?
I'm good. Well, I'm knackered, but I'm good. I'm good.
What have you been doing?
Started a new job
Magic?
this week. No, I started a new job.
Oh, okay. Well, that's not very magical, is it?
Well, it's a bit of a cult, but that's all I'm about to say.
Ah, right. Don't speak too publicly about the cult you've just joined.
I know,
So,
right?
this week's topic, well, it's called I Spy, but this week's topic is about psychic work and
Psychic
magical
development.
espionage, spying using psychic stuff. Why are psychics so crap, Chris?
I think it's down to their lack of magical training, actually.
Right. So, but psychics don't do magic, do they? They just do the seeing and the sensing. They don't do the doing, do they?
Well, no, but I think if they actually had more of a foundation in witchcraft, they probably would be better psychics.
But I
Because
thought that witchcraft was a religion now. What does having a religion have to do with anything to do with psychic seeing?
Witchcraft is not a religion. Stop
not?
trying to start me on the W word.
But I was told by a high-ranking Wiccan that if you're not Wiccan, then you're not a witch. Is that not right?
Oh, was that comment on YouTube last week?
Well, we all know that witchcraft was, of course, invented in the 1950s and that there was no such thing before that, surely. I mean, that must be the case if this person is supposed to know, if there's a person that's a legitimate witch, if they said the witchcraft didn't exist before Wicca and that you have to be Wiccan to be a witch, then surely that means it didn't exist before the 1950s. But going back onto our topic for this evening, which is the psychics. So let's start off super simple. It's a Q&A so people can ask us what they want to ask us in regards to magic. You don't just have to stay on the topic of psychic work. You can ask us anything to do with magic. Can't promise we'll answer, but So I'm thinking psychics, they come in a lot of varieties, don't they?
Right? They do.
Like fizzy drinks come in a lot of varieties. You've got your Coca-Colas, and then you've got your Coca-Cola Zero, and then you've got your Diet Coke. That's all part of the Coca-Cola variety. But then there's also Fanta and Iron Brew and Sprite and that, right? So in terms of the different psychics, if you're sticking to your primary kind of stereotypical ones like Coca-Cola, what versions of a Coca-Cola are there? Because I'm thinking the psychics are the ones that you see at the psychic fairs now, or maybe like Psychic Sally or something. You flick on your television, the telly box.
Oh yeah, Psychic
and there's someone that's saying, "I've got a man here called George. He died when he was older."
But then we're talking about mediumship there, aren't we?
That kind of a psychic. So that's your Coca-Cola variety psychic, yeah.
Your mediumship.
Well, mediumship, but then there's this general stuff that you'd see, like the tarot cards and all that. It's basically answering questions or speaking to spirits.
Okay, yeah. So necromancy is what we call that.
Well, I don't know, because there's a lot of modern day necromancers that don't like to be put in the same category as the psychics and the mediums, because they think what they're doing is a bit more serious and hardcore because it involves blood and guts and gore and bones and the like.
Well,
how many mediums do you see tapping the bone?
I don't know. Well, there is that, but still, it's communication and it's divination through the dead, mostly speaking. So, not including angel tarot readers.
Yeah, angel tarot readers.
But that's down to the question of whether or not they believe that their messages are coming directly from angels, or if they think that is just the vehicle in which they get their imagery.
Right. Okay. So
I think we
how
need to
do
go
you
to super basics.
how do you compare and contrast these different varieties then? Because you've kind of already made a distinction of you've got people that speak to spirits and people that answer questions using a what would you say, magical technology, a device or a tool like a tarot cards or a pendulum or a Ouija board or whatever. You know, so you've got the one where there's psychics that use some sort of tool, and then there's ones that connect to something, because even with the connecting to something, it will vary as to what they say they're connecting to. Some will say they're connecting to a higher power or their higher self. Some will say they're connecting to Great Aunt Deirdre, who happens to still be alive. So I don't know how they're connecting to that, but who knows? I mean, time is not linear, so it could be a possibility. Connect.
Yeah. Future and past lives, all along the same vein. I'm not sure how many psychics would agree with you on that, though, but we'll carry on with that. You don't hear very many.
Assume that time is not linear.
So, well, I always assume time is not linear, but my point is, when it comes down to a lot of psychics, I don't know how many psychics that are on the circuit would necessarily agree with us on how they experience time, but we will move on nonetheless.
Well, I'm here for a good time, not a long time. That's what I always say.
Exactly.
So what about outside of this spectrum? Because with the psychic fairs and the television psychics, there's always a client, right? There's always someone that you're doing the work for, whether you're getting paid for it or not. There's another person or people that you're working for. Now, I've noticed within secret magical traditions, whether it's witches, covens, or secret societies or whatever, there's no client. So it's the person that's doing the work with the spirit, and it's a secret. So they're doing work, they're involved in some sort of spirit on a project, or they're using their own psychic ability in order to push themselves forwards. So with that, you're asking what you want to know from what you want to know, essentially. Whereas with the psychic fair kind of things, you're talking about where you're being asked to go find out some information for someone, you know, in exchange for something normally, such as a fee. You know, 20 quid and I'll read your palm or something.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think to a certain extent, there is that kind of, even with the kind of psychics that wouldn't consider themselves to be mediums, it's almost passive in the approach. Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Yeah. They just relay whatever it is that comes to them.
Who's available, you know, who's available, what information is available, as opposed to forcing the situation to get answers. And I suppose that's the difference to what we're talking about, I guess, where that's where I find that the schooling is important, the pushing. I think when you're doing it from as you know, part of the craft, you are pushing yourself to excel. You find psychics and mediums that you meet on the circuit who, you know, have been working with spirit for X amount of years, or this gift. They often talk about their natural ability as opposed to one that they've pushed for. Obviously, as human beings, we're all equally entitled to the same access. The brain has the capacity for it, regardless of whether or not you were born a psychic or develop the ability as you get older. And I think part of it is that I think when you've got a natural ability at something, you don't always feel need to push yourself further, because you go to the bit that you won't
know how. If you've never had to work for it, how do you know how to work for it?
Yeah. So I think that's what I feel like I kind of mean by practice. So not necessarily a witchcraft practice, though I think a good foundation in things like grounding and cleansing is something that's often missing with the psychics that come to us with their problems. Because let's face it, we do deal with a hell of a lot of psychics that burn themselves out, particularly the naturals, don't we? And that's often
Yeah.
what's happening.
So your
Sorry,
average...
I paused because I think there was a lag. Sorry.
Yeah, but either there's a lag or there's something wrong with the signal, because it sometimes the words come through, sometimes they don't, and your mouth still kind of moves. He's still there. You're stuck by the looks of it. I don't know if he's just smiling at me or whether he's like, and that's all I see. I don't know. He might still be talking. I might be talking over him. Don't know if he's still there. What a nice little shot, though, if not. Are you back?
Kind of. Don't know what's going on.
Okay. Well, you'll have to send me a psychic message if you can't hear what I'm saying, okay? So, what would you say, taking an average of psychics, professional psychics, the sort that you'd see at a psychic fair, for example? Oh, okay, he's gone. He's disappeared. That's not very good, is it? So, now Chris is gone. Hopefully he'll come back in a minute, but it looks like I've got I've got full control of the show now, so I can start talking about stuff which I'm not normally supposed to talk about because Chris tells me off and that. So psychics, from my perspective, are absolute shit. Okay, the amount of times I've gone to psychic fairs and stuff and paid money and not paid money, you know, sometimes you get freebies and the like, and I've asked for a specific piece of information and they've not been able to give it to me, or I ask them, what is it that you do, what can you do, what can't you do, this sort of thing. They don't really give me a very solid answer. Now, we live in a world full of skeptics, and we like that as witches. We like skeptics. We don't want people to be realizing that magic is a real thing, because last time that happened, we had a witchcraft trials and the like. Magic is an amazingly powerful force that people can tap into, and if it's readily accepted that that force, magic, that thing, is real, then it stands to reason that people are going to start inventing laws to govern it, and that's what we don't want. So we kind of have a bit of a trouble within the witchcraft community, within the psychic community, and within the magical community, from what I see, and that's that we want to put ourselves out there and do the work of a witch or a psychic and the like, but at the same time we can't be too good, because if we're too good, then it would be proven that it is a thing, and therefore bad stuff's going to happen, okay, to the psychics and the witches and the like. So where is that level, and how do you find it? What would be a kind of acceptable level? Will that ever change? You know, interesting concepts, interesting questions I don't hear a lot of people talking about. And how do you know whether a psychic that you're talking to is really putting actual effort in? So if you think of it in terms of, okay, so I might be sitting across from a table, sitting across the table from a psychic at some chintzy psychic fair, like the Great Travelling Psychic and Holistic Fair, for example, chintzy psychic fair, right? So I meet me psychic at the chintzy psychic fair, and I say, you're a psychic. I don't really know a lot about psychics, but I know you know stuff. So can you tell me some stuff? Can you give me like a reading? Just tell me some stuff you think I should be aware of and the like. How do I know that the psychic is getting information and that they're not holding it back from me? Because that's one of those things that a lot of people, when you get to talk to them after a little while, it kind of, the subject comes up is, how can I trust the psychic? Would they tell me the truth and the like? Are they, there he is, he's back now, I think. Are they telling me the truth? Are they holding back? Do they know something that they're not telling me? And why is that? Because I've talked to some psychics and professionals, and they've said, well, if it was really bad, I probably wouldn't tell them. And I think, oh, that's not good. That's not good for a reputation, not good for business. But maybe it is. So, Chris, now you're back. What's your thoughts on this subject? So, how to tell whether a psychic is holding information back from the client, and is that ethical? Is that something you do? Is that something that people should be aware of that happens? What are your thoughts?
I know it's something people do. I would often rephrase it. Not, I don't consider that to be holding back, but more a case of being sympathetic to the person. I still give them the answer. You just find the best way to say it. In terms of figuring out whether or not they've held something back, would sometimes be the long pauses, and those ones I would normally get to go, just give me the what you're seeing. It really depends on the psychic at the end of the day. Lots depending on how that psychic receives information, they may not necessarily be holding back. They might just not be seeing the full picture, or at least or not understanding it. Particularly those that see it in a kind of how do you put it, like it's a symbology. Like I can remember one session I had with a psychic that started talking about Prince William and Harry. Now that meant absolutely nothing to her, but for me, I knew exactly what she was talking about. But obviously, to the psychic, she was like, "You can't possibly know those people," and I'm like, "No, but I know what you're talking about. Carry on. What was the message?" So,
Right.
in those kind of where they don't know necessarily the syntax, or they don't have the the ability to kind of push past into a set of images that they understand. This is what I mean by the passive part, where they'll give the information not entirely understanding what the information is, just in a medium state where they are just handing over information to you. I don't always feel like that's them holding back.
Okay, right. So, because there's this idea, right? Again, doesn't really get discussed all that much, but from my perspective, a good psychic is a lot like a psychologist in that they know more about you than you do.
Yeah, or at
They
least they
can read
should.
all of the tells of your body language and the like, and
Yeah,
they know all your deep dark secrets that you don't know. They know more about your psyche than what you know. However, there's a lot of psychics that just get, like you said, the passive. They just get the information and then they
yeah,
spew out the information and say, does that make sense to you? Sometimes the client says yes, sometimes the client says no. I don't like working with those sorts of psychics, and I don't like that sort of psychic approach. I think that the psychic should have all of the answers and they should be able to put it into the context. And I get a little bit worried when people are just spewing out information. As a psychic, and because I'm a bit nosy, I also do want to know what is actually going on. I don't want to just spew out the relevant information. I want to know what's going on in your life, right? And I think that context and all that's important. So Catherine Veronica has put a comment in. Please feel free to comment even if you don't want to ask a question. Holding back is sometimes better because I see a lot of doom, death, and accidents and stuff. So the real difference I'm seeing here is between, do I know what the context is, or am I spewing information out because I can't censor it, versus I'm deciding to censor something. So there will be instances where the information that you're getting, because you're just kind of connecting with maybe the client or something, and you're kind of, like tuning in an old fashioned telly or an old-fashioned radio, you get a little bit of other channels. So you're like, oh, I didn't need to see that. That's not relevant. I'll ignore that kind of thing. There's that, which I understand. Don't get me wrong. I don't really think that's censoring. I think that's sticking to the point that you've been asked. However, there is people, such as Catherine Veronica, it looks like, who will say, I don't think this person can cope with this, or I think this is a bit too nasty, or I don't think that this is too doom and gloom, as she says, because she sees too much bad. I'm not going to say that. Whereas I'm of the persuasion that you're being paid to answer a question,
to give
or to do a
answers.
service. So if you've got that information, you come back. If I'm a private investigator and I get paid by some guy to see if his wife's cheating on him, I don't take all the snapshots and the pictures and think, you know what, this might upset him. I'm not going to say that his wife's having an affair. Obviously, most psychics aren't going to do that. Most private investigators aren't going to do that. However, here's the real crux, is that, okay, I know that the person's having an affair. I know the wife's having an affair. But do I show him the pictures of his wife getting jiggy with the plumber?
Yeah.
Or do I not show the pictures? So it's like I'm given enough information, but I've got more information. At that point, I think a professional private investigator is probably going to turn around and say, there are pictures. Would you like to see them? Are you sure? And the client has to say yes or no, and they've got to live with the consequence of that. What I don't do is I don't decide I'm not going to show them because they're too graphic, you know? Because I know that he might have been thinking, because you can go as far as you want. Like you could be saying, you know, okay, they're pretty graphic. There's this, there's that. You know, you might be trying to second guess or read the situation of, well, how much can the client cope with? Because this is difficult with psychic work. And we know some psychics that are also professional counselors and psychotherapists, and they would be more aware of, well, actually,
the risk.
Coming to terms with another half having an affair might take 20 sessions with a counsellor. You're just spewing all that out there and walking away after 15 minutes because they've paid for a 15-minute reading. And it's difficult being a professional psychic because you've got to think, where's the ethics, where's the professionalism there? Do I
where's the
give
boundary?
them just the highlights because I'm worried about, you know, upsetting them and them having a knock-on effect and going home and, you know, being depressed and the like? What do you do? Well, this is all in the marketing and this is all in your terms and conditions, really. You should be thinking about all of these things beforehand because you should be telling people, I think, as a psychic, the service that you're providing. If you're providing the, what is it that Paul says? Read like the devil type reading where I'm going to put it all out there and it's going to be harsh, then you should say that this is how it's going to be. If you're going to do the fancy nicey, I think you should also say that. Because at the end of the day, whether you're a psychic or not, even if you're a psychic, you're going to make bad judgment decisions. You are going to upset people. You are going to make people overjoyed and the like, you know. It is one of those things that when you're dealing with answering difficult questions that are going to have an impact on a person, censoring information or not censoring information is a big thing. There aren't any professional guidelines from what I'm aware out there, you know. Is there any official psychic bodies, like official organizations?
Well, no, because you've got to remember, Liam, it's for
entertainment purposes only.
Entertainment purposes only. Yeah. So you can't regulate when it's for entertainment. Like, so
well, clowns and acrobats, they have an official body that they can be members of after they pass acrobat school, and they're for entertainment.
Yes, but that's about you're not comparing like for like. That's not how it works.
Okay.
Anyway,
I'm wondering if we should start one up.
So, well, you just have to go. Like my advice is always when it comes to going and seeing a medium or a tarot reader or any kind of psychic, is basically saying only go and see those that you have been personally recommended.
But if a new psychic starts up shop, they haven't got any clients and they're not read for anyone. So
Yeah,
how does
but
that work?
in those situations, you've got a green person. So if you're willing to go and do that, most of those readings will be for free, or for small amounts of money. But I'm talking about the kind of £50, 15-minute kind of readings that you get, that you've got no way of knowing how good they are, and how many likes on Facebook is not necessarily a true reflection of how good a psychic is. And you don't know necessarily what their background is.
So are they like one-armed bandits at the arcade? You put your pound in and you pull it, but you don't expect to win? Versus I'm going to make an investment with a big amount of money. So if you're putting a lot of, whether it's emotional, remember, emotional or financial, you put the amount in for what you'd expect from the service. So if you're wanting to discuss super complicated and emotional things to do with your private life, you might not want to discuss that with a crappy psychic, a £5 psychic or the like, unless they've got a great reputation, perhaps.
Yeah, or you've gone and checked them out, and some of these green people are sometimes the best readings because they don't hold back, or they don't necessarily second guess themselves, because obviously lots of people practice on family and whatever, which I think Jenny's just said something similar.
Jenny started readings on family mainly to get more confidence, and then she did relations that she didn't really know, so people she didn't really know.
Yeah. And then I know a lot of psychics, particularly when they begin and start out, don't know what to charge because they've never done it before, or if they're brand new. And I find reading for family and friends is often harder. One, because you're not prepared always to tell them what you see, because family rifts, etc. But secondly, I think some people second guess themselves when they start off with family and friends because their conscious mind has information already about them. So when they're trying to actually open the doorways to the unconscious and beyond, is the part of kind of going, oh, but I know, she was looking a bit fat last week, maybe she's pregnant, because they've just happened to see the Empress card or whatever, how it happens. Where
that's
they kind of
impressive. The Tesco app knows that. There was a scandal, wasn't there?
Yeah. But you get what I'm saying, though, is the fact that I find that actually practicing on family and friends, however, can be useful the first couple of times. I think in some ways it's better to put yourself out there, I guess, on some of these forums and just get a few randoms, because that way you don't care about necessarily the answer, if that makes sense. So you're more likely to take a bigger risk, and push your boundaries a little bit more. And then obviously as soon as you feel comfortable, think about setting yourself up after that. But I think these kind of psychic groups on Facebook and stuff, they've got thousands of people on them. Most of them are chiming for some free readings because they're all desperately seeking love, or think that husband's sleeping with the gardener, that sort of thing. So those places are full of people that you can practice on, that you've got no commitment because money's not changed hands. And to me, it's not a binding contract unless there is some kind of money involved, or some trading off. So, I think that's a nice, safe one. And we've got lots of comments here, so I probably should shut up for a second while you press some buttons, Liam.
Oh, something's going on with the buttons. It's all messed up. I'm glad I do the camera bit on my phone now, because the broadcast studio just ends up messing up constantly. Right, I think I'm back in. You can read stuff from family you, the reader, don't want to know about them. Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's a different kind of risk.
I had a client, it wasn't family, thank gosh, who said to me, I want you to do a reading for me, and I want you to tell me why I like runes, even though I don't know anything about them. I saw her have a gangbang with 2 guys in a tent. That's what came through. But I've got to decide, do I relay that information or do I not? If I was the passive psychic, I'd literally be like, look, I don't know why, but I'm seeing you having a gangbang with 2 guys in a tent, right? If I was a decent psychic, I'd know why I'm seeing that. You see?
Yeah.
Which brings me to the main question, which is what I was kind of getting to when you skedaddled and the internet broke that time, which is, what's the average ability level for psychics from your experience? So what should you, if you walked into a psychic fair, what should you be able to expect as a kind of professional standard?
I think you'll get a few decent tarot readers. You'll get a couple of very decent mediums. I think there's a better standard of medium out there than there is necessarily tarot reader. I don't know if you'd agree. When I say that, I mean what I mean by that is that they're able to give more accurate information, not necessarily knowing what to do with it, which is my criticism, but the actual, in terms of the information they can give, I do find there are a lot more mediums out there that are better than some of the tarot readers. Now, that's not a skill. It's not a judgment on skill level. I think that's just generally saying that actually, if you're going on accuracy, but then they often have more to say. So is that actually, more bullets need to be less accurate? I don't know, but yeah, I find a lot of the psychics and tarot readers that are very unbalanced, often because they're not, they've received no professional training, because there isn't really a professional training. The closest you get is spiritualist churches, and I won't go on that one. But that's down to a fact, you can't let yourself go in the way that you need to in order to be really good. I'm not saying there are no good ones out there. I've met some really good ones out there. They've still been undisciplined, and they've still been really bad with the energy transfer. And maybe we can get to that in a sec after we've dealt with all these.
Well, I don't answer the question. What's the standard level for a client?
I don't know what you're asking me for, though, Liam, because what do you call a standard level?
That's exactly what I'm asking. What is the standard level? What is it that you call a standard level, that if you were to walk into a psychic fair or go on a psychic website or whatever, that you should be able to say, well, I know if you ask this, they should all be able to tell you, or 90% of them should be able to do it. Because there's levels which are a bit up there, but your standard level of what you would expect a psychic or medium, whatever, to be able to do or tell you, or service really that they should be able to provide, what is that?
I don't really think there is one, and that's the problem. Because depending on which way they've approached it, I've very rarely met 2 psychics that are even remotely the same. Right. And that's down to how they approach it, because there's no formal training. And that's what I mean is they're not even aware of what kind of psychic really they are. There's a few archetypes that they're used to using, medium, psychic, etc., etc. They're words that they're told to use. They don't actually hold any real meaning. like the word, what's happened to the word witch. It's generic. It doesn't really mean anything anymore. So it's really hard for you to kind of, for me, I want specific information now, but that's not a fair standard, because I don't feel that all psychics or all mediums, etc., would be able to do that. I like to start by saying as little as possible, see what they're able to get, but staying open. I think some people that go to see psychics and are skeptical shut themselves down. That's not the idea. The idea is open up and see what they can actually do. Obviously, I use all sorts of tricks in order to test psychics, but I'm not suggesting you should go out and do that either, if that's what you're trying to get me to say, Liam.
Well, you play with your food though, don't you?
I play with my food all the time. I'm
so
very bad in that
there
way.
is no professional standard for psychics. They come in too many different varieties. Essentially, it's kind of like going to a what is it that they have? Is it conferences? You know, where you've got like one of those places that you go and they've got all the trade stands and all that.
Yeah,
Convention.
they're all completely different brands.
It's like a convention for DIYers. You don't know what you're going to get. Some DIYers, they might be retired construction workers. They might know a bit. Others might have just picked up a book from a B&Q. So we don't really know. There's no professional standard. Go in on a psychic website that says they test them. There's no guarantee that they'll be any good. And you shouldn't be able, you can't go to one and assume that that person can answer the question that the other psychic that you spoke to last time, who isn't there now, can answer, because they're too specialists.
What you think of how the standard is? Obviously, we can only speak to the UK, but how many professional telephone and video and TV psychics we know, and you have gone and worked for these yourself, so you know exactly what they're after in the people that hire them.
Yeah.
So it's not a nice trade to be in, full stop. And actually, I don't think being necessarily a great psychic is gets enough reward, really, because the great ones I've ever met, one, like I say, because they're not disciplined enough, burn out quickly. They're great, but they burn out quickly, almost like those great masters of painting, where they've not slept in 10 years and therefore wonder why they have no creativity left.
And they do it all by candlelight.
So kind of like, it's that kind of like, some of them burn bright and burn for a very short amount of time because they lack this. And I kind of feel like some of that foundation needs to be put in. But I think we should talk about that. But I also think we should deal with these comments first, Liam.
Okay, what comment should we go for?
We'll start at the beginning, we'll work down.
Okay, starting at the very beginning. I think we covered holding back. We covered that. Hi all. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fausty Witches show.
Sorry everybody, Liam's going to take the piss now. Can you just...
Legally, no official body, we have to say by law, all readings are for entertainment purposes only, which is something we never say, isn't it?
Well, no, but then we market ourselves as witches, not psychics.
This is true.
And witchcraft doesn't exist.
Recommendations, and then we were talking about family, of course, doing readings for family. I used to always second guess myself when I first started out, but reading at Development Circle helped loads. What's Development Circle?
That's possibly a spiritualist thing. So there's lots of
groups of people together that are trying to explore psychic work.
Try and explore together.
Right. So is it like Alcoholics Anonymous for psychics? The first stage is admitting it. Hello, I am a psychic.
No, Liam.
No.
No. It's about kind of fostering natural talent, I think, is the idea. Right. But I don't think it often pushes far enough from the psychics that I've met.
You can read stuff from family that you, the reader, don't want to know about. We kind of covered that. I never comment on health and pregnancy as I'm a nurse and midwife and I'm not a doctor, etc. So I don't go into health. Am I wrong by doing that?
No, I think that's fair enough. I
I
think
don't
if
know
you
if.
would,
Sorry.
I think that's different if you're talking about witchcraft, Liam. I think when it comes to you're a psychic and people in that community know you in a professional role, that is difficult to balance before you go and say the sorts of things you would normally say.
Well, I'm going to go and say the sorts of things I'm going to say anyway because it's me and it's my opinion. Am I wrong by doing that? So I don't think you can be wrong by doing something that you want to do. So if you as a psychic, Jenny, John Hammond, do not want to do readings that are to do with health and pregnancy and that, you're fully within your right to say, I don't do that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that because you're choosing to specialize in certain things or saying, I don't touch these areas. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with that whatsoever. What I would say is that when it comes to psychic work, psychics get accused all the time of mucking about with things they don't understand by every profession. Because by the very nature of being a psychic, you're answering questions, right? So if you answered a question to do with finance, a registered qualified financial advisor would say you shouldn't be doing that. You haven't got a clue, right? If you answer questions about health, a doctor might turn around and say you shouldn't be saying that. You don't know, you ain't a doctor, right? If you answer questions about love, a counsellor is going to turn around and say you shouldn't be commenting on that because you're not a counsellor. You haven't done marriage counselling. You haven't got a qualification in it. In the modern day, we're obsessed with qualifications for good reason because people get screwed over by idiots and well-meaning idiots and also people trying to con them. As a psychic, I think that you could do a reading on anything. However, what you've got to think about is, are you capable of doing that? And that's why I like to go to the DIYers, because technically, if you're a DIYer, there are some jobs you're legally allowed to do and some jobs you're not legally allowed to do. However, just because you're not allowed to do it doesn't mean that you couldn't do it perfectly and better than a professional. So in terms of this kind of idea of what should psychics be allowed to do, what shouldn't they be allowed to do, if you're doing any form of psychic work, you're stepping on the toes of someone with a certificate, whether it's a psychotherapist, whether it's a health professional, whether it's a counsellor, whether it's a tradesperson, whether it's someone that likes to go out and do what is it, those things with the hoop, magna, whatever, looking for gold and stuff. What's it
Oh, a
called?
metal detector.
Metal detector. Yeah, whether there's a special name for them in there. Whether you're stepping on the toes of the local metal detecting association because you're telling people where buried treasure is, you're stepping on the toes of someone as a psychic. You know, so it is a difficult one. You decide what you feel competent to go into in terms of a specialist, and you decide what information you're going to give and what information you're not going to give. Okay. Now, you will be judged for it. You'll be judged by the client. You'll also be judged by the rest of the world and the community. But ultimately, it's your practice, your psychic practice, magical practice, whatever, your professionalism. And you make the big decisions because you're self-employed at the end of the day. So you're the boss. You decide what you're going to go into, what you're not going to go into. And on your head being...
But like I said, Liam, when you've got a professional job at the same time, finding that balance, regardless of what that profession is they are two different jobs. So, you know, I can understand why some people...
I think he's disappeared again. He disappeared.
Their work.
Oh, He's back.
I'm back, I think. I don't know.
I don't know. Well, we're talking Arthur Findlay College. Everyone's been there. I haven't been there, Catherine Veronica, and I'm not entirely sure what it is. What's Arthur Findlay College? Maybe someone can enlighten us in the comments.
I imagine it's one of those online training ones.
Right.
Like the what do you call it? Institution. What's that one by? Whatchamacallit? The one you always say. The other one.
We're presuming
Virtue,
it's a psychic
whatever her
school,
name
are
is.
we?
Yeah, I'm assuming it's one of them.
Academy, training academy. Okay. Keep on Chatting Network. Is that the kind of artificial intelligence that runs the software? Because it must be psychic.
No, we're one of the mods, you fool.
Oh, okay. One of the moderators says, personally, I don't like generalized
The
reading.
ones that can shut you down for not being efficient. Move on.
Okay. Personally, I don't like generalized readings. It's an interesting one, actually, generalized readings. Because what is a generalized reading? For me, all that means is the client don't know what they want. They want to go to a psychic. They don't know
what they want to be told.
They want to ask, right? So you have to take a different approach with that. What you'd have to do really is I always do the simple thing is I say to them, you want a generalized reading, which means you don't know what you want. Therefore, I'm going to tell you what you want, and that will be your reading. So that would be the reading. And if they know then what they want, they can pay again for another reading and actually ask a bloody question instead of saying, I just want to come here for the experience.
Yeah.
You're only as good as the information given to you. Don't know about that one.
Nah. I'm not living with that one.
That's not a witch's perspective, definitely, is it?
No.
Because witches are like a dog with a bone. They'll go wherever they need to go to get the information they want.
Yeah, that would be, I've invited a random spirit. I don't know who this spirit is, rather than summoning up the spirit of grandma, because that's who we need to speak to.
I think that's a question of loyalty. Okay. If the client comes to you and says, I want to know where grandma's kept those pearly earrings that she used to like, because I want them. You've got to decide if grandma's there and she's not telling you the information. You've got to decide, who am I loyal to? Am I going to respect grandma? Or am I the client who's paying me? Am I going to do what they want me to do, which is find out where those bloody earrings are? So there's a couple of ways you could play this one. You could say, you're paying me as a medium to connect with grandma. I'm only going to tell you what grandma tells me, because that's what you're paying for. Or you could say, which is more like what we'd probably do, is grandma don't want to tell you, so I'm going to get rid of grandma and I'm going to go and search with some other sorts of magic to find out the answer to that question, because although you've paid for grandma to tell, she ain't telling. So we'll go and find the information out another way. So it's kind of like, depends. Depends on how far you want to go for the client and what your service entails. With a private investigator, it's tiered, isn't it? You've got the silver, the gold, the platinum. The platinum, you get high definition video footage of your wife. The gold, you just get high resolution pictures. And then with the silver, you basically just got low resolution, maybe one picture, that's kind of the difference. How far are you as a psychic going to go? How much effort are you willing to put in? For a £5 at a psychic fair, probably not a huge amount. But if you're a great psychic, you don't take a lot of effort to go above and beyond, does it? So it's difficult. It's difficult. Again, it goes down to what your personal
You are
way of
wordy
working
today.
is, doesn't it? What?
Have you had a Red Bull or something?
No, I'm just high on life.
Oh, sure.
We're getting through these questions. I give empathy and think about what I receive to give then your client what message you receive. So we've got someone that really puts a lot of thought into probably the client's perspective and what they really want to know, maybe.
You're looking after the client better.
Sometimes I do that if I'm in the right mood for it. A lot of the time I'm not, because I read like the devil and I just say it how it is. But then I get thrills when someone walks off for crying. I feel like I've done my job then. Yes, spiritual circle law. You learn the do's and don'ts as well as meditation, opening up and closing down, so on. So yeah, basically kind of like spiritual circle training, essentially, I guess, but not training one on
Yeah,
one, presumably training as a group.
it's group
People.
training, but like I said, it teaches not the basics we would teach. It's a different kind.
A real college for mediums. That was that Arthur thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, like I said, it's one of those. It's one of those Society of the Psychic Arts thing.
Keep on chatting network robots back. What I am saying is when you
It's
get
a real
generic
person,
reading.
Liam.
But it's keep on chatting network. That's what the software is called, isn't it? So it must be a robot. It's like the
No, it's
equivalent
not a
of Siri.
robot.
Hello, keep on chatting Siri. So keep on chatting Siri says what I am saying is when you get generic reading, they tell everyone the same information.
Oh, she means cold reading.
Oh, okay. Right.
I think she means cold reading there.
Hi
Oh, Jolene's
guys.
back.
That's for Jolene.
Jolene's back. I think we need to get Jolene on the show at some point
Hi
because
Jolene.
she likes talking about tiger penis.
Ah, we're still waiting for that tiger penis.
Hasn't arrived yet.
Well, I've got to the end of the comments. We've got about 10 minutes left, Chris, so I think we've done quite well. So should we talk about a
Well,
magical spine and the like?
we should do, but
Right.
I kind of feel like we haven't covered what we would consider basics in training.
Well, is it not so much about training, it's about I Spy was the name of this thing. So it's talking about specifically using psychic ability to spy on people. So you're
Yes.
talking about information gathering, and you're
Uh-huh.
talking about you need to get the amount of information required. Who sets that? The client, surely, yeah? Or if you're doing it for yourself, you decide, what do I need to know? Ideally, have that written down to refer back to. So, for example, Witch Wars 2, the competition we hold, is to do with a magical spying. In the Witchcraft Live Facebook group, we have this dossier, right? This dossier is blanked out, yeah? There's information that is not there. We're trying to get psychics to give us information when they download this dossier about the person. We need as much information as possible, and the people that give us more than what's here, even with the blanks filled in. So the first step is to fill in the blanks. The second step is to get more information than what's actually out there in the world, okay? Yeah. So we're talking about pushing your magical espionage. So we're spying on people, Chris. So Chris, what's the problems with a magical spying from an ethical perspective? Are there any? I mean, are
The only ethical, you don't have any ethical issues until you talk about divulging information. So what you do
but
with
do
the
you? Do you?
no,
Because
I don't know.
I don't know,
Just
because there's someone
I
that
don't think
likes to
there's
be
any.
naked sunbathing in the garden, right?
Well,
And you can
they shouldn't be doing it out in the garden,
accidentally,
then, should they?
you could accidentally see them, and you could think, oh, I didn't need to see that. That's a privacy thing, right? Or you can actually go and look, right? So, it's kind of
No,
like how
that's
easy
not
is
the
it to get
same
the
thing, Liam.
information? So it's quite easy to go and look. So you're saying they're putting themselves out in the garden, therefore, it's a free for all. Go and have a look at them, but they're still in the garden. They're not going down Tesco's, are they? So is there a privacy issue? Is there not a privacy issue? So the difference is,
I don't have a privacy issue with it. What I have is a when it comes to divulging information. So, I would
so
have to
you're
have had a
happy to know
research.
everything and it not be a privacy problem. But
No,
if you tell other people, then it is a privacy problem. Is that what you're saying?
I am the CIA. I can gather
Right.
all the
You
information
you
I
feel
like.
you need to know everything.
I have the freedom to gather all the information I like. That is survival of the fittest. That is. I have all the information, therefore I is clever. What you do with it, I think, is where the ethics come in. Come on, Liam, you're talking to me. At the end of the day, I have no interest in most people, so why would I look to begin with?
But this is the
But
problem, isn't it? This is the problem now. We're talking about, normally we'd set the guidelines of, if I want to see the naked neighbour and they're not out sunbathing, I'd have to break into their house and hide in the cupboard, right? That is a privacy thing, because I've had to put effort into doing that. But if you're a great psychic, you don't need to put effort in. Okay, so mundanes walking around in their mundane lives, you can spy on them by accident all the time. They wouldn't want you knowing that information. They just don't know that you can pick up on things because they ooze out, like they ooze out sweat, they ooze out information that you pick up on as a psychic. If you were to go and do that to a witch protects themselves and puts blocks up. So if you would smash through those blocks in order to get the information, which is a privacy thing. But I'm talking about those that haven't got the blocks up but would still consider it a privacy thing. Do we just pretend like it's acceptable to do that because they're
I'm not
none the
saying.
wiser?
At the end of the day, unless it's hurting them, I don't see why there's a problem. You can learn as much as you
No
want about
victimless
me.
crime.
You can learn about as much as you like about me, but at the end of the day, the information that is actually important, you wouldn't be able to get hold of. So, that's down to me having the right privacy settings on my information. That's each person's individual. So
Okay. So
I
the
think
neighbor.
I'm handing a justification for hackers here somewhere, but I'm not meaning to.
So the neighbor. They're getting undressed in their bathroom. The bathroom's got blocked out glass, but the window's open, and the angle that you're looking at just so happens to see right through. Okay, they're trying to get changed. They don't want people seeing them. The window's open, but they don't think anyone can see them. You can see that person. So, as a professional psychic, if you pick up on something that you know other people don't want to be shared, would you tap them on the shoulder and say, you need to
You might
learn
want to
some
cover that, love.
defense? Much like you'd go and knock on the person's door and say, love, you
Your
might
blinds
want
are
to close
open.
the window when you get changed because everyone can see
Yeah,
you. And I don't think you really want to do that. Would you do that? And if you are, is that just
yeah, I would.
advertising the Thoth Patreon? You're just tapping them on my shoulder and saying, you're oozing all sorts of stuff that psychics are picking up on. Get yourself on the Thoth Witchcraft Patreon and learn how to block this stuff.
Learn some real defense.
Learn some
I
defense.
suppose.
Right.
I suppose it really depends on what I stumbled across. If I stumbled across something that meaningless, then I probably wouldn't worry about it. If they were letting out something that they really shouldn't, and I don't think they would be happy knowing that they'd let that out, then yes, I would probably tell them.
What about if it's something that's morally disgusting? So say that they're let's just call them a predator, because this happens all the time. They're a predator. They're leaking out the fact that they get up to very, very predatory, illegal things. Would you help them? Is that acceptable to spy on them? Because there's an ethical kind of general,
I probably wouldn't. I probably wouldn't do any more.
Behavior go on.
I probably wouldn't do any more spying. I'd probably just smash through their visibility, so that everybody knew. But that's just my own ethical guideline at that point. I think you can't teach that. That's up to people's individual. Where they feel necessary to get involved is not something you can teach.
So if Chris disagrees with your moral and ethical choices and who you are as a person, he will seek wrath upon you, like a god or goddess. Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much.
At least you admit it. Right, so we got a couple of questions and comments and the like. I was taught that you respect spirit and the information they give you, as sometimes the information the sitter receives is not what they want to hear, but I was taught you work for spirit, not the sitter. By the way, it's Karen Frey. type in. Oh, well, you had to ruin it, didn't we? We thought you was like some sort of Skynet robot, didn't we?
No, only you thought it was a Skynet robot.
Well, Skynet robot's supposed to take over the world in it, according to that Terminator film. So I'm getting ready, you know. That's an interesting point.
I have issue with that. You know I will, and
Well,
I think Karen knows I would.
Work, obviously, but
it's not how we operate. But that's where you're giving. That's where you're giving complete trust to another entity. So it's how well you are. It's how good you are identifying the source. And that's where my next question would be: could you dissect that spirit and tell me exactly where that's coming from? Because I would want to know exactly where that information's coming from if I'm going to trust it. Now, respect is something slightly different. Obviously, I have respect for human beings, even the ones I dislike.
Do you?
Liam, don't start.
Okay.
We don't have the time. So the same comes with spirit. You know, until they've given a reason for you to not trust them, I'd still want to see their ID. So it's, you know, if someone came knocking at the door, trying to sell me, you know, a new roof, I would want to know where they're from and what they're doing. So I would treat spirit exactly the same.
Yeah, but you don't necessarily hold spirit in a specific high regard, do you?
No, not particularly.
It would depend on the spirit you're talking about.
Yeah.
Some you would trust more than others from your perspective. And dead people, you wouldn't trust them at all.
Not big on the necromancy.
Yeah. They're very unreliable, dead people. It's like visiting a nursing home talking to the dead. They just go on and on and on about shit. Okay, the medium is a vessel to pass on a message. So this is going back into that kind of thing. So it depends what you're setting yourself up as. Technically, the clue's in the title. If you're a medium, you could be one to relay messages. But when we're talking about psychics, not all psychics will set themselves up as that conduit to receive information. A lot of psychics will set themselves up as oracles. We answer questions. We don't care what techniques we have to use to get those answers. So if someone asks me a question, I might say, okay, I need that information. Can I call upon a spirit to get that information? Can I get the tarot cards to do that information? Can I do some remote viewing or something to get that information? It's kind of, to a certain extent, they're all tools in a toolbox.
I'd like that word back, though. I would like to hear more people refer to themselves as oracles and seers.
Yeah, I love that
word. I think it would clear up some of the. I think it would clear up some of the messiness of the word psychic. Not that I like pigeonholing people in boxes, but I feel there is an important nuance between the two.
Yeah.
Whereas me, if I hear someone say the word medium, I think puppet. So that's and therefore not necessarily got control over what they're passing through. So yeah. Carry on.
From a marketing perspective, I think is more important, because if
Yeah.
you're wanting to, you know, hire out a body to stick Nan in so you can talk to her, then you talk to a medium. But if you're wanting to go and actually have information, you might go and visit the oracle. So from an you know, perspective of what you want, because an oracle would actually be involved with the process of, I'm working for you to get that information, whereas the medium to a certain extent is kind of, well, okay, I've got the ability to do this, I'll just rent my body out, I'll just pull in whatever information. It's different services, and some of these words, psychic is a big umbrella term for a lot of these different services, but they are different. So we got another question. Am I wrong on not taking my readings further forwards? Depends what you mean by that. If you're a psychic, then again, it's easy with professionals, because professionals would have I offer this service. So if you're not offering that service, you haven't taken it far enough. If you have offered that service, you've fulfilled your end of the contract, which takes us really into not professional psychics, witches, people that work, priests, priestesses, that kind of thing, people that work on behalf of a spirit to help the spirit do its job, or someone such as a magician that would be working on their own projects that's trying to use psychic ability to help with that project. So that's really like a dog with a bone. You don't let up. You decide what you want, what information do you want, and you'll jump through whatever hoops you need to get to that information. You wouldn't necessarily do that as a professional for someone else, but if you're trying to do something like a big work, a great work, okay, buzzword, and then you're trying to work towards something like that, then you're not going to end up saying, well, the tarot cards aren't giving me this information. What you're going to do is you're going to try and work out why aren't they giving you that information, and how can you further your knowledge and further your ability to get that information. And then we got one last thing. Is this live stream on every Wednesday at this time? Oh, 2 p.m. Bloody hell.
Yeah, CST. Yeah, it is.
So yeah, in the
Central
UK,
Standard
we're
Time.
on at every Wednesday at 8 o'clock in the evening.
GMT.
So yeah, this live
which is 2
stream
p.m. CST.
basically happens at the same time every week, for about an hour. So yeah, we have a different subject, but at the same time,
all the other lives,
people want to talk about.
All the other lives, if you go to Keep On Chatting Network, you and the Facebook group, and you'll be able to see all the different ones that are on there. There's a lot of content on there now.
Well, I think that was a comment from the YouTube as well. So on the YouTube channel, the Keep On Chatting Network YouTube channel, all of the back issues, or the back, whatever we call them, episodes of the Fausty Witches show, our show, is on there. And then there's also other content as well. So, anything else, Chris? I think that was the last comment.
Yeah, more on Jenny's comment. Obviously, if it's whatever you want to set that up to. What exactly you want to achieve with clients. And like I say, I don't know if you're newly pushing from just starting out or whatever, or if you're further along the line and actually wanting to diversify. Like I said, with you, it's going to be a case of whether or not your professional boundaries, what you're willing to actually give or not give, is entirely up to you. But in terms of pushing forward, I think psychic development's always good, even for the ones that do new work.
It's like yoga, Chris, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because
you stop doing it, stop stretching, stop pushing yourself.
You always push yourself further. So if you master some sort of complex move, complex position, stretch, whatever, you're always pushing yourself further and further. Continued professional development. You should never stagnate. You should always push yourself that extra bit further and further and further. Because there's people that stagnate. They stagnate because they don't think they can push themselves any further, and they don't know how to push themselves further. But it can be done. There really are no limits.
No, and we've all got new things to learn.
Yeah. And the last question was, do I work to the sitter or the spirit? So I think Jenny's asking, does she work for the client or the spirit? So that's up to you. And not all psychics work with a spirit necessarily.
No.
So
not all psychics are mediums, and not all mediums are psychics.
If I was doing psychic work as a psychic, I would always work for the sitter, you call the client, because that's the contract that we're under. They come to me for information. If I take payment for that, that means they're going to get that information. So it depends. If you were a priest or a priestess of a spirit cult, you work for the spirit. Okay, so it depends. Ultimately, you should only ever be working for yourself, because you're you. But in terms of where your loyalties would lie, if it was one versus the other, that's something for you to answer. We can't really answer that.
No.
You be yourself. Don't try and be like other people doing reading. Be yourself. That's what I said. Kind of.
Yeah. Pretty
I think
much.
Ian put it a bit better than I did, but yeah.
Definitely.
Right. This episode of the Fausty Witches is done. If you want to enter the Witch Wars 2 competition, you need to get yourselves into the Witchcraft Live Facebook group, download the PDF, use your psychic ability, tarot cards and the like. The only thing we are forgetting, Chris, is Fanny Kranik's wisdom for the week. So I do a shuffle and we can see if there's any wisdom that our friend Fanny.
Well, while you're shuffling, I'm just going to say, obviously, the Patreon is.
I had one fall out. Does that mean that I should always read the one that falls out, Chris?
You should do, but you should also let me finish and not talk over me.
Okay, I'll keep it here. Continue.
So what I was just trying to say was, obviously, Facebook group is there for you to kind of freely develop. Obviously, it's a good little good little space to talk to other people that are also developing. And then obviously we also have the Patreon, which obviously if you want to push further, obviously we do mentoring through the Patreon service. So if you want to have us help you push your services further, just check out the Patreon. It's not expensive. Anyway, so Fanny Kranik had something to say.
Fanny Kranik has something to say. So Fanny Kranik has to say this week, an argument is coming.
Yeah, I think it just happened.
That's not very good. Maybe it'll happen after. And for Jen, whoever answered the question, Jenny, when you talk about readings and that, live your own life, mate, not someone else's. You go and make your own mistakes, and you read how you want to read. If you're wrong, you'll soon find out. And if you get yourself into deep doo-doo, there's always the Thoth Witchcraft mentorship service where we can help you, bail you out when you cause us trouble and the like. But there we go. That's it for another week. So that went quickly.
That went quick. That went too quick.
And I didn't say the C word.
No. I don't think you even dropped an F-bomb, to be honest. I'm very impressed.
Fuck, didn't I?
Of course you would.
I gotta remember to do that. Bye, everyone. This is the bit where you got to wave, Chris. Go away.
Oh, well, I couldn't see you. It's lagging still.
Bye.